My name is Claire. I'm going to be talking about the P5 web editor migration today. So for those just joining or new to processing, P5 is a free JavaScript library for creative coding, and you can use it no download required with the web editor here, which is the project that we're going to be working on. A bit of personal background. As mentioned, I used to be a menswear designer, and I learned to code starting 2023 to do a career switch. Now I'm a full stack developer at Spotify. The reason I got into this project was that I actually got into JavaScript through p5.js. So this is a project that's super close to my heart. So we're doing this TypeScript migration, but what does that all mean? What's the difference between JavaScript and TypeScript? TypeScript is like JavaScript, but with extra stuff on top. So in addition to your usual code, you also have types. So that's string, number, Boolean, array, object. These are examples of each of those types. And you can think of types as being similar to like parts of speech in English grammar. So noun, verb, adjective, preposition, etc. So just to illustrate this, does anyone remember the game Mad Libs? I like to think of it like when you're coding, you're often editing stuff that other people have written. So it's a little bit like Mad Libs. So you have all these blank spaces to fill in. In JavaScript, it would be like Mad Libs with 0 hints. So you can definitely still fill in stuff, infer from context clues most of the time. But I think it can be quite hard to figure out what a past writer wanted you to do. And on this video on the right, we have this greeter function. You're supposed to plug in something called name. So the first usage of this instance is like correct. You're plugging in Kevin. That's a name. What if you plug in nothing? What if you plug in one? What if you plug in null? And you run the code. In JavaScript, this all runs, but if stuff is using this downstream, it could totally break your code. So you're not supposed to be able to do this, right? But we don't have hints on the fact that you can't do this. In TypeScript, it would be the normal version of Mad Libs that we all know. Here's the TypeScript version of this greeter function. So it says name has to be a string. And so when you use it wrong, you'll see that you get these little red squiggles. These are type checks. It's like spell check or Grammarly. And then if you hover over, it'll say, hey, you can't do this because you put in null. It's supposed to be a string. So you have like visual guardrails. I think it's super useful, especially as like a person from a non-technical background, to have these visual guardrails because I learn visually. I don't have to read loads of documentation to understand what something is supposed to do or understand loads of theory. So here's some context for the web editor project or the code base. Some things to highlight for the migration are that this repository is huge and also started in 2016, so a little bit of legacy code. There's 100,000 lines of code, so it's not possible to migrate the whole project within this 200-hour time limit. And as such, because we're probably going to migrate things file by file, we'll have to support both TypeScript and JavaScript. And also the test coverage isn't super high, so we have to be careful of accidentally breaking things. And it's also like a quite highly requested issue. So nice that we're doing that. So given these challenges, I decided the ultimate goal wasn't to migrate the entire repo, but actually to set it up so that beginning contributors can pick this up as a good first issue. So migrating a piece of code as a good first issue. What this means is like eliminating all the friction from having to configure TypeScript. Here's all the tech that we have to configure to allow both TypeScript and JavaScript. Having example code for each kind of file that you might encounter on the code base. Here's like types of files that you might encounter on the server, on the client, and ideally have examples of writing tests for each kind of file as well. And lastly, setting up tooling and automated checks. So that spell check that I was talking about, the type check, having that run manually or automatically when a user is trying to save and like upload things or add changes to the code base. So here is a project timeline of stuff that was done month by month. Just due to time, I won't go into this super in detail, but I linked the appendix so you can pop in and there's like loads of technical documentation for anyone who's interested in that kind of stuff. So 20 plus PRs and 4 months later, what was changed? What happened? We're gonna pop to a demo. So here is the before state of the web editor. Here's what it looked like before. And here's what it looks like after. Ta-da! Huge difference, right? Just kidding. If everything was done correctly as a user, you should see absolutely no difference. If you do, something's gone terribly wrong. I had a really hard time thinking about how to show like this migration project because migration is very invisible. But I thought of an analogy again. I think it's a little bit like cable management. So for the user, you come onto the site, you should see the exact same thing before and after. But as a developer, you're like working into the code. Hopefully, the after is going to be a lot neater and easier for you to work into. So, in summary, we have all of the config and checks set up. We have 20% coverage for TypeScript. Canva is not participating with me today, but I will show you the demo video on YouTube. So we've migrated a bunch of files in both the server and client, really quickly looking at all the files that are migrated. Everything that's blue is TypeScript, everything that's yellow is still JavaScript, so still some stuff to migrate for sure. And to demo the automated checks, I'm going to purposely do something that is against TypeScript and put in something that's not expected. So you can see here, you can hover and see that, hey, it's going to give you hints on how to use this component correctly. I'm going to try to commit, and the automated checks that come before you commit are going to happen, and it blocks you from pushing that code. I also made a tutorial for anyone who's like sort of new to JavaScript and TypeScript. I go through the general steps of migrating a piece of code. This is also a YouTube link within the appendix. And I'm not a content creator, so I'm sorry. This is made on iMovie. It looks really ugly. But for anybody who's interested, I would also be interested in hosting like a migration workshop in the coming weeks. So if you're interested, please do say so in the chat. Otherwise, all the config has been figured out for contributors to start tackling migration. So yeah, go for it. Um, I have some next steps outlined in the appendix as well, but I just wanted to highlight this one, creating a Swagger/Open API website to document all the endpoints. So I made this like proof of concept using the user types that were defined as part of my migration work. As you can see, it's just like a central location to yeah, define all your API endpoints and make them super clear. I think if you configure it correctly, you can like try it out as well. And yeah, just see all the different types on the code base. And thank you so much. That was all. I'll reshare the appendix and PDF version of these slides in the chat for anyone who's interested in like a deeper dive of this project. Thank you so much.